The crate no one wanted. The auction yards a Virium prime stank of rust, oil, and desperation. Under a sickly yellow sky, ships floated overhead like bloated insects, blinking and humming as they unloaded goods from across the quadrant. Beneath them, traders barked over loudspeakers, advertising everything from power cores to plasma pets. Lines of cages stretched for blocks, beings and machines stacked side by side, indistinguishable to many. But there was one crate that didn't shout for attention. It sat crooked near the trash compactor wall, small and dented, wrapped in dust and silence. The scanner tags on its surface blinked red, not green. The top one read in bold black letters, "Returned defective, do not resell." Inside that crate, unmoving, sat a girl, silver skin dulled by grime, thin limbs tucked into tight hair, black as vacuum, tangled around her face. Her eyes, large and dark, stared forward without blinking. She hadn't moved in hours, maybe days. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. Her name, long forgotten by most, was Kari. Once, she'd been called special, gifted. She had been raised on a moon colony far from here, adopted by a diplomat who vanished during a riot. After that, she was traded like a tool, 5 homes in 6 cycles. Each new owner returned her faster than the last. To quiet, to fragile, to strange. Her last handler hadn't even looked her in the eye, just slapped on a label and dropped her off like scrap. One trader had marked her file with a term that made her stomach twist every time she saw it: broken. Now, she sat on cold metal, legs crossed, arms limp, breathing just enough to stay alive. The crowds flowed past her like a river of noise and indifference, until someone stopped. A tall figure in a worn brown coat, stained from old ship repairs, paused before a crate, boots scuffed, tools hanging from his belt. A human, rare on this side of the sector. His name was Decker Rain. He wasn't here to adopt anyone. He needed a new iron coil for his ship, and maybe a backup grav stabilizer. But his eyes locked on the crate, and they didn't leave. Kari noticed the pause. She'd learned to read people's intentions in milliseconds. This one didn't flinch, didn't scarf, didn't move on. He crouched low, looking through the bars. The girl didn't speak, neither did he. The vendor, a hulking Zarnakian with a face like a collapsing nebula, spotted him. "Don't waste your breath," the seller grunted, waving an oily hand. "That one's no good. Been sent back 6 times, doesn't eat, doesn't talk. Screws up machines just by breathing near him." Decker glanced up. "Then why keep her in a crate instead of letting her go?" "Paperwork," the seller shrugged. "Official defect. Can't dump her till the salvage freighter comes next week." Kari didn't react. She'd heard these words before, just noise. But Decker didn't walk away. He stood, brushed dust from his coat, and pulled a credit chip from his pocket. It glowed a soft blue, high denomination. The seller's eyes narrowed. "You're joking." "I'm not," Decker said. "I'm not paying for a product. I'm offering compensation for her release." "Same thing," the vendor snorted. "No," Decker replied. "Because I'm not expecting her to serve me." He dropped the chit on the vendor's table. The Zarnakian blinked, then shrugged. "She's yours. No refunds." The crate opened with a soft hiss. Kari didn't move. Decker didn't pressure her. "I can carry you if you want," he said gently. "Or you can walk out yourself. Your choice." Slowly, her fingers flexed, her legs shook as she unfolded them. She looked down, then up. She had no idea why he was doing this, but she stood. When she stepped forward, her feet felt like metal blocks. But she kept moving, out of the crate, into the light. The crowd didn't cheer or notice, they never did, but her life had already changed. Decker's ship was old and patched, with mismatched alloys, but it was clean, real, and warm. The ramp lowered with a whir and hiss. Kari followed him inside. The hum of the ship greeted her like a distant heartbeat. She stepped carefully across the metal floor, expecting cages, cuffs, commands. But there was none of that. tools hung neatly from the walls. The air smelled like copper and soap. A folded blanket waited on a bench in the corner, like someone had planned for her before even knowing she'd come. Decca walked to a panel, tapped a few buttons, and warmed a bowl of stew. The scent made her stomach lurch. She hadn't eaten anything warm in. She couldn't remember. He placed the bowl gently on the table. "You don't have to talk," he said. "You don't have to finish it, but it's yours." Kari sat, stared, reached for the bowl with trembling fingers. She drank it slowly. Every bite made her chest ache in a strange way. Something was happening, something unfamiliar. Comfort. Afterward, Decca showed her a small room. A bed, a light, even a drawer with clothes folded inside. "This is your space," he said. "No one comes in unless you want them to. Lock the door if you need. I'll be in the engine bay." Kari stepped inside like it was a dream she was afraid to wake from. As Decca turned to leave, her voice cracked through the silence. "Why?" He paused. "Why what?" he asked. She swallowed. "Why did you take me?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because the universe already gave up on you," he said softly. "But I didn't." That night, Kari didn't sleep much. She stared at the ceiling, at the walls, at the blanket she clutched tight to her chest. It smelled like soap and warmth. Not a cage, not a trap. It felt like possibility. And she didn't cry, not yet, but she thought maybe, just maybe, she might, someday. Not from fear, but from something that used to be impossible. Hope. The room with no locks. Morning came slowly on Decca's ship, the firelight. It didn't wake with alarms or shouts, only the quiet hum of the reactor warming the hallways. The ship moved steady through space, not toward any particular place, just away from what had been. Kari opened her eyes. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was. The ceiling wasn't rusted. The air didn't stink of oil or sweat. No footsteps thudded past her cage. No locks clicked shut. She sat up slowly. The blanket fell around her shoulders. It was soft, not scratchy. Her clothes were clean. Her name, not a number, not a product code, still echoed faintly in her mind. Kari. No one had called her that since the first time she was sold. The room wasn't large, but it was warm. A small panel on the wall blinked softly. The door was shut, but not sealed. She tested it. It opened with a gentle hiss. Not locked. No locks. She froze. That couldn't be right. Everywhere she'd been before, doors were locked. Cages clicked shut. Hands shoved her in, pulled her out. She wasn't used to choosing when to leave a room. And yet now, she had. The hallway smelled like metal and soap. Soft lights pulsed along the floor. A faint sound echoed from somewhere deeper in the ship. Not yelling, not alarms, just clinking. Tools. She followed the sound, walking barefoot, quiet as always. She passed a galley, a small storage room, and an open viewport showing the stars slipping by like quiet fireflies. She stopped at the engine room. Decca lay under a pipe, tools scattered beside him, sleeves rolled up. Sparks flicked against the floor as he welded something into place. He didn't flinch when he heard her steps. Didn't turn suddenly like others had. "There's a chair," he said from beneath the pipe. "You can sit. You don't have to talk." Kari didn't answer, but she moved to the chair and lowered herself onto it, folding her hands tightly in her lap. He worked in silence. She watched. His hands were steady, sure. He didn't rush, didn't slam things. He talked once, to himself, when a bolt wouldn't thread. "Come on, you old junk ball. Don't argue with me." Kari blinked. He was talking to the machine, like it mattered. She tilted her head slightly. She didn't understand how he did it, how he made the ship feel. Calm. Finally, he sat up, wiped his hands on a towel, and leaned back against the wall. Sweat gleamed on his forehead. He took a long breath and looked at her. "I was about your age when I fixed my first engine," he said. "Toaster back on Earth, nearly set my socks on fire. But it worked." She didn't smile, but her head turned slightly more in his direction. I like quiet, he said after a moment. Too many people fill silence with noise. But quiet helps me think. Kari's lips parted. Her voice was a whisper, raspy with disuse. Everyone always said I was too quiet. Then they were wrong, he said without pause. Quiet doesn't mean empty. Just means you're listening. She stared at the floor. They said I was slow, broken, not smart enough. He leaned forward, still sitting cross-legged. They lied. You're not a product. You're a person. Her eyes flicked to his. There was no mocking. No test in his words, just truth. It made her chest ache. Decker stood. Come on. Let's eat. The galley was small but organized. A table, 2 chairs, a heater unit and shelves of food packets. He didn't push her to talk, just placed a bowl in front of her and took his seat. She hesitated, then picked up the spoon. The food wasn't fancy, but it was warm, real. She finished the bowl faster than she meant to. Decker offered another. She shook her head. He didn't question it. After they cleared the table, he handed her something small, a flat card. Room key, he said. Don't need it, really, but I thought it might help. She turned the card over. It was smooth, white, and in soft blue letters. One word was printed, Kari. Her hands trembled. No one's ever written my name before, she whispered. You'll hear it often now, Decker said. Standing. Because it's yours, and you're not going back. She held the card like it was made of glass. That night, she didn't sit in the corner of the room. She sat on the bed, still curled in, still wary, but something in her had shifted. The room was small, quiet, and hers, not assigned. Not temporary, hers. Later, she touched the wall panel gently. The ship vibrated beneath her fingers, alive, but not threatening. It reminded her of Decker's voice, low, constant, calm. He had opened the crate. But he hadn't expected anything in return. He had let her choose, let her eat. Let her be silent. And maybe that's what trust looked like in the beginning. Not fireworks or promises, but one open door and no chains on the other side. She sat back against the pillow. Her eyes stayed open. She didn't cry, not from fear, but from something scarier. Possibility. The kind she had never dared to believe in, not until now. Learning to breathe in silence. Days passed quietly aboard the Firelight. Decker didn't press Kari to speak. He didn't assign tasks. He didn't ask questions about her past. He moved through the ship like a gentle current, always nearby, never too close, never too far. And Kari, like a stone in a stream, began to shift ever so slightly, without knowing she was moving. She woke up every cycle at the same time. Not because of orders, not because of alarms, but because her body had started to believe it was safe, enough to rest and wake up on its own. One morning, she walked into the galley to find a small, folded cloth with a note on it, for Greece. It gets on everything. Next to the note was a jumpsuit. Old, patched, and several sizes too big, but it was clean and soft. She touched it gently. No cuffs, no collars. Just clothes. She changed and padded barefoot into the engine room. Decker was already inside, crouched under a glowing panel. Sparks lit the air around him as he adjusted a loose conduit. When he heard her, he didn't look up. Just smiled. Chair's still where you left it, he said. Kari sat, knees tucked under her, and watched. She didn't speak, but her eyes never left his hands. How does it work? She asked softly. He paused. His voice didn't change. He didn't act surprised she'd spoken. Which part? All of it, Decker chuckled. Then we've got a lot of time ahead of us. That afternoon, he brought her a small kit, a broken circuit board, a testing tool, and a dim display. Panel, let's start here. Nothing explodes. Probably. She took it with care. Her fingers trembled at first, but once they started moving, they remembered more than she thought. She had been forced to fix things before, under pressure, under fear. But this was different. There were no deadlines, no shouting, no punishment for failure. She worked slowly, carefully, And Decker didn't hover. He just sat across from her, adjusting a sensor, offering quiet suggestions when she paused along. That pin's shorted. Try rotating the connection point. She did. The panel flickered. Better, he said. It wasn't praise in the way she'd heard before. It wasn't patronizing. It was calm, factual, encouraging. Later that day, she sat outside the engine bay and stared out the viewport. The stars were different now. They didn't look like jail bars. They looked like doorways. Decker sat nearby, sipping from a dented metal cup. You know, he said, I used to think the stars were too far. Now I think they're too close. Kari tilted her head. Why? Because the more you know, the more you see what you've lost. She looked back at the stars. I don't remember losing anything, just being moved. Like cargo. He didn't respond for a moment. Doesn't mean you can't start remembering things now, he said finally. Or building new ones. That evening, she found a small device on the table near her bed. A communicator. A basic one, made for kids or travelers. There was a button on it. When she pressed it, it lit up and played a sound. A soft chime followed by a voice. Her own voice. She flinched. But it was from earlier. Decker must have recorded it. That moment when she asked how the engine worked. Her voice had been soft. Curious. Real. On the back of the device, written in marker, were the words, proof. She slept with it in her hand that night. And she dreamed. In her dream. She wasn't in a crate. She wasn't on a cold floor or under a bench. She was in a field of stars. And she was walking forward, step by step, towards something bright, not away from pain, but towards something of her own. The next morning, Decker handed her a datapad. What's this? She asked. Your profile. She frowned. I don't have one. They erased it. Decker smiled. Then we'll rebuild it, together. He showed her how to input a name, a preference, a skill. She stared at the blank fields. It felt overwhelming, but she typed anyway. Name. Kari skills. Repairs, circuits, listening likes, warm soup, engines, quiet, dislikes, loud noises, metal crates, being touched. Decker nodded in approval. Solid profile. She looked at the screen. Her shoulders loosened. She wasn't a barcode anymore. She was a person. That day, they stopped at a small trade station on the edge of a dying asteroid belt. They needed coolant fluid, fuses, and fresh food. Decker didn't tell her to stay behind. He just asked, want to come? She paused, then nodded. She wore her jumpsuit and boots. Her hair was tied back with a band he gave her. No collars, no labels. Just her. They walked into the station together. Some stared, a few whispered, but no one dared approach while Decker was beside her. She stayed close, but not behind him. When they passed the vendor stalls, she picked up a broken comlink and examined it. The vendor reached for it, assuming she'd fumble. Instead, Kari twisted the casing gently, pulled out a snapped pin, and reattached a loose coil. The device blinked to life. The vendor blinked. How did you? She listens, Decker said. Kari handed the device back. No charge, she said quietly. The vendor was stunned into silence. Back on the ship, as they unloaded supplies, Decker turned to her. You didn't flinch once today. Kari smiled. Not wide, not loud, but real. I forgot to be afraid. Decker looked at her. Good. Keep forgetting. That night, Kari added something new to her profile. New entry. I want to stay. And, beneath it, she typed one more thing. A thought she'd never dared say aloud. I want to become someone. Not a product. Not a number. Just Kari. The ghost from before firelight floated beyond the asteroid belt, coasting along quiet trade lanes, far from the reach of the core worlds. Inside, the ship hummed softly, a sound Kari had come to understand as safety. She worked at the side table near the engine bay, legs tucked under her, a small light overhead. She was repairing a pulse stabilizer, one of the few things Decker had intentionally left half broken. A test, not to see if she'd fail, but to see if she'd try. And she had. With steady hands and focused eyes, she tweaked the loose filament and soldered the frayed coil back into place. When she powered it on, the stabilizer blinked green. She smiled to herself, not a big smile, but a full one. One that reached her eyes. Decker stepped into the room and leaned against the wall. "You've got the touch," he said, nodding. "I used to think I was bad at this," she replied. "You were just taught wrong," he said. "Fear's not a good teacher, but patience is." She nodded. Later that evening, they shared dinner in the galley. Warm root stew with some kind of flatbread from the last trade station. The conversation was soft, mostly quiet, but peaceful. Kari had started asking questions again, about ships, planets, tools, even stars. She was growing, but growth has a way of stirring up the past. The message came through the main console as they were finishing cleanup. A low beep, followed by a red alert on the monitor. Decker walked over and tapped the screen. The file was audio only. The voice that came through was smooth, calm, and venomous. "Decker Rain, I believe you are in possession of property that belongs to me. A girl, silver-skinned, quiet, registered under several transfer contracts. Your coordinates were flagged in the auction logs. Return her immediately, or face legal consequences." Golven ores. Kari froze. Her spoon slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a soft clank. Her breath went shallow. Decker turned slowly. "Kari." She didn't speak. Her body trembled. The name Golven had pulled something from her, something hidden deep. She backed against the wall, trying to press herself into it. "He found me," she whispered. Decker's voice stayed calm. "Is that someone from before?" She nodded once. "Last handler. He didn't hit, didn't yell, just used me, like I was empty, then dumped me." Decker walked to her, but didn't reach out. He gave her space. "He says you're still his property." Kari choked on the word. "He always said that, even after I was sold. That I was his, forever, not anymore." Decker said firmly, "You're with me now, and I don't care how many contracts he has. You're not going back, but the law, then we go to court," he said, voice low but steady. "But no one takes you without hearing your side first." Kari lowered her head. "They won't believe me." "They'll believe me," Decker replied. She didn't argue, but she didn't nod either. That night, she sat in her room. The name badge Decker had made for her clutched in her hand. Kari. It was still hers. But for the first time in weeks, it felt fragile. Decker didn't sleep. He reinforced the ship's door systems, updated the defense protocols, contacted a neutral station's legal counsel, and flagged the threat. He even installed a second-layer encryption shield around the navigation logs. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be enough. If they came for her, they'd come with paperwork, not weapons. In the morning, Kari was gone. Decker found her outside the ship, sitting on a storage crate, a small bag at her feet. He froze. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving," she said without looking up. His voice dropped. "No, you're not. If I stay, you'll get hurt. You're not a danger to me, Kari. I am to myself," she whispered. He walked closer, crouched down in front of her. "You think walking away's safety?" "It's what I've always done." "Not this time," he said. She met his eyes, something she rarely did. "Why do you care so much?" Decker didn't flinch. "Because someone should have cared a long time ago." They sat there in silence, stars overhead, engines humming faintly in the background. Finally, he stood. "Then let's do this right. We go to the station. You tell your story. I'll stand beside you. And if they try to take you..." She looked up. "Then they'll see what this old ship's still capable of," he said. 2 hours later, the Firelight docked at Station Veritas, a neutral station orbiting a quiet planet. The corridors were clean, cold, and filled with silent security drones. Kari walked beside Decker, her name badge pinned to her jumpsuit. She didn't shake. She didn't hide Dot in the hearing room. Galvan Oros sat in polished robes, calm and well prepared. His voice was smooth as glass. That child belongs to me. Registered under full contract. She disappeared illegally. Corrie said nothing. Decker stepped forward. She is not property. She's a person, abused, discarded, and now finally safe. There is no record of abuse, Galvan replied, eyes cold. No injuries, no reports. Her silence is not evidence. The judge, a pale-skinned alien with 3 eyes and a calm tone, turned to Corrie. Do you wish to speak? She stood slowly. Her voice was low but clear. I was treated like a tool, a possession. Passed around like I was nothing. I was never asked what I wanted. I was never called by my name. She touched the badge on her chest. I found it again. I found me. Galvan snorted. That's not legal ownership. No, Corrie said. Louder now. But it's proof I'm not owned. The judge leaned back, silent for a long moment, then spoke. This court recognizes Corrie as an independent individual under the protection of human guardian rights. She cannot be claimed, bought, or returned. She's no longer under contractual authority. Galvan stood. You'll regret this. The judge didn't blink. No, you will. Outside the chamber, Corrie breathed, deeper than she had in years. She looked at Decker. I thought I'd have to run forever. He smiled. Not anymore, she nodded. You stayed. I always will. Returned, not to a crate, but to herself. The journey back to the firelight from Station Veritas was quiet, not the heavy kind of silence Corrie once knew, but a stillness that carried weight and wonder. She sat in the co-pilot seat beside Decker, her name badge warm against her chest, fingers wrapped around it like a promise she had just begun to believe. She was free. The judge had said it. The court had ruled it. But freedom, Corrie realized, wasn't something you just received. It was something you had to learn how to live in. The stars outside glided past the window, cool and slow. Corrie leaned forward slightly, forehead resting. Against the glass, her reflection stared back, tired, pale, but unmistakably alive. Behind her. Decker worked the controls with quiet ease. His hands moved across the dash like they knew it better than his own thoughts. But even as he flew, his eyes kept glancing toward her, checking, not out of fear, but care. He said nothing. That was his gift. When words would only bruise the moment, he kept them tucked away. He just flew. And let her breathe. When they landed back on the repair moon, the hangar was mostly empty. Just a few old vendors setting up their makeshift stalls, and one cleaning bot skimming the edges. Decker paused at the ramp lever. Want to go in first? He asked gently. Corrie looked at him and gave a small nod. I want to walk in, she whispered, not like a product, like a person. Decker's smile was soft. Then let's walk in side by side. They entered the market together. The same rusty booths, the same cracked tile floor. The same eyes watching, but this time, they saw something new. She wasn't slouched. She wasn't shrinking. She wasn't hiding. Some stared, some remembered, but no one dared say a word as Decker walked beside her like a moving wall. At the tall vendor stall, a thick-necked alien leaned forward, squinting. That her, he muttered. The runaway. Decker stopped, slow and calm. No, he said, without raising his voice. That's the free girl. The alien smirked. Didn't she get returned 3 times? Decker took one small step closer. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. She's not a package, he said, his voice steady as stone. She's not broken. Say one more word like that, and I'll show you what we do to people who talk like slavers in front of my crew. The alien's face paled. He backed off, muttering something about customers. Corrie didn't move. She stood still, heart racing. Decker looked at her. If you ever want to speak, I'll step aside, he said. But until then, I'll be the wall. Back at the workshop, the air was filled with soft clinking and the scent of metal polish. The benches were covered in scattered tools and half-fixed gadgets. Kari stepped inside and took a slow breath. This time, it felt like home. She unpacked the new supplies, wiring kits, data chips, and a micro solderer. Everything had its place now, including her dot. She moved with confidence. Not rushed, not careful like a cornered thing, but intentional. She picked up a busted drone core and placed it on the bench, then a cracked relay hub. "Can I take this one apart?" she asked, holding up a damaged scanner. Decker grinned. "That one's all yours." She got to work, and 4 hours, she barely looked up. Her fingers moved like they had remembered who they were. She wasn't just repairing anymore. She was redesigning, improving. Later, a soft chime echoed from the corner of the room. A message. Decker tapped the console, and a familiar but unexpected voice came through. A guard from Station Veritas. His voice was hushed but firm. "We saw the hearing," he said. "And we've been listening. There are others, like her. Children. Quiet ones. Lost ones. No one knows how to reach them. But she did. Can she come? Can she show them?" Kari stepped forward, staring at the screen. "They saw me?" she asked. Decker nodded. "And they believed you?" The next day, they boarded a shuttle to a colony ship docked nearby. The ship was clean, but cold, a floating city in space, but hollow where warmth should have been. In a small holding room, 2 alien children sat curled against the wall. One boy, one girl, silent, watching. Kari didn't speak at first. She just sat on the floor, pulled a tool pouch from her belt, laid it out slowly. Then, with careful fingers, she began fixing a small broken music cube, a device she had brought from the shop. She didn't even look at the children, but they looked at her first, out of curiosity, then out of something else. Hope. As the soft music began to play from the cube, a low, gentle hum, the girl moved closer. Then the boy they sat beside her, eyes wide, still no words, but trust doesn't always speak. Later, one of the caretakers approached Decker in hushed awe. She didn't say anything. The woman whispered. She just was what they needed. Decker nodded. "That's who she is." On the shuttle ride home, Kari held the music cube in her lap. "I knew what they felt," she said softly. "Like the world forgot them. Like they were broken." Decker looked out the window. "And you showed them they weren't," she nodded. "Because someone once showed me." Back on the firelight, she began teaching herself new skills. Not just repairs, programming, circuit design. She filled a small notebook with sketches, things she wanted to build, devices she wished she'd had. A heater for freezing escape pods, a voice button for children who couldn't speak yet. An alarm that buzzed gently, not loud, when someone was too scared to shout. "I want to make things," she told Decker, one night, "that help people feel safe." He handed her a new pen. "Then you will." And she did. One day, someone called her not just a mechanic. They called her something else. The quiet builder. She didn't flinch at the name. She smiled. The voice that was always there. The shop had changed. It still smelled like solder and metal dust. Still buzzed with the quiet hum of half-repaired machines. But now, it carried something new. A kind of reverence. People didn't just come for Decker anymore. They came for her. "Is the girl here today? Can Kari take a look at this? She fixed my relay in half the time." Quiet, but sharp, Kari heard the whispers. She never responded, never corrected them. She just kept working. The name didn't matter. The recognition didn't matter. But what did matter was the moment people started to trust her. Not because they owned her, but because she proved she could help. That afternoon, a miner came in holding a sputtering drone in his arms. It was dented and whined like it was in pain. The man's hands were calloused, shaking. "She's all I've got," he said. "Overheats during lift. We don't have the credits for a new one." Kari knelt beside the table and ran her fingers along the wiring. The drone buzzed, jittered. The man stepped back instinctively, thinking it might spark. She didn't flinch. Her fingers were calm, precise. She adjusted to tiny coils, rewired a split thread, and sealed the cracks with silver bonding tape. Then she set it on the table. "Try now," she said. The drone lifted, hovered, silent, smooth. The man blinked, then laughed, loud and hoarse. His eyes shone. "Better than when I bought her new." Corey gave a small nod, then turned back to the workbench. But as he left, he touched his chest and said, "Thank you, builder, not product, not slave. Not quiet thing in a box. Builder. That evening, Decker returned from the spaceport with a datapad. A message glowed on its screen. One from a colony ship. "We have to more rescued kids on board," the voice said. "Like Corey, quiet, unresponsive. We don't know how to help them open up. Would she be willing to visit again?" Decker showed her the message without a word. Corey read it twice, then nodded. Double quotes. "Yes," she whispered. "I want them to know they're not alone." They left the next morning. The ship was bigger than the last, bright halls, sleek panels, and polished floors. But still cold, still quiet. In a side room, two small alien children sat in opposite corners. A boy and a girl, neither looked up. Corey entered slowly. No bag, no tools. Just herself. She sat down in the middle of the room, cross-legged, and waited. No rush, no demands. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small music cube, the same one she had fixed for the others. She pressed the button. Soft notes floated through the air. She didn't speak. She didn't move. The music played on. The girl peeked first, then the boy, slowly, like leaves turning toward sunlight. They inched closer. They didn't talk, but they sat beside her. Close enough to hear the sound, close enough to breathe together. Later, a caretaker pulled Decker aside. She didn't have to say anything, she said in awe. She just was what they needed. Decker smiled. "That's who she is." On the way back to the ship, Corey stared out the shuttle window. "I used to think I was invisible," she said quietly, "but now they see me. Always did," Decker replied. "They just didn't know what they were seeing." Back on the firelight, Corey opened her notebook, the one where she wrote her sketches and inventions. She flipped to a new page and began to draw. Not machines. People. Children like her. Abandoned, quiet, waiting in the dark. Underneath the drawing, she wrote, "Build not just for fixing, but for remembering." She designed things she wished she'd had: a personal heating unit that wouldn't burn sensitive skin, a one-button communicator with color-coded replies for those too scared to speak, a signal beacon disguised as a bracelet for runaways too afraid to ask for help. "I want to make things," she told Decker one night, "that help people feel seen." He handed her a brand new sketch pen. "Then you will." She did. Her name began to spread, not through ads, not through promotions, just word of mouth. From one grateful traveler to another, from one broken machine to one repaired life, they started calling her the quiet fixer, others said. The girl who listens. A few simply called her Corey, the gentle. Each name felt like sunlight on soil. One day, a reporter came by. Not from a big network, just a small station on the moon's outer ring. She was young, nervous, holding a recorder. "You're the girl," she said. From the court case, the one labeled defective, Corey paused at her workbench, wiped grease from her hands, then turned. "What would you say to the ones who gave up on you?" the reporter asked. Corey looked into the camera, calm, solid. "I wasn't broken," she said. "They just didn't wait long enough to see who I was becoming." That night, the stars over the repair moon looked different, not cold, not unreachable. Just quiet and waiting. Decker stood beside her outside the shop. The wind tugged at the corners of his coat. "People see me now," she said, arms folded. "They always should have," he replied. "But you were the first," she said. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She knew. She was no longer just safe. She was no longer just free. She was believed in. And that changed everything. The girl who chose to Shinith repair shop was never quiet anymore. Not because of noise, but because of life. Customers came and went, carrying tools, damaged equipment, or just stories that needed telling. And through it all, Corrie moved with purpose, calm, steady, sure. The girl once kept in a crate was now the reason strangers waited in line, sometimes just for the chance to thank her. But Corrie never bragged. She didn't talk much about the court, or her past, or even the label that once hung around her neck. She just worked. She repaired a miner's old core scanner, restored a nurse's defibrillator, tuned a mechanic's failing grav clamps. Each time, people left with more than just a fixed device. They left feeling like they mattered, because Corrie had become more than a name. She had become a signal, one that told others, you were not broken just because no one saw your worth. One afternoon, a quiet alert pinged through the ship's console, a message from a nearby station. The voice on the comm was low but filled with awe. We've heard of the girl, the one who listens. We have 2 children, recently rescued. They don't speak, won't eat, don't trust anyone. Can she come? Decker turned to her, didn't ask, just waited. Corrie nodded. Yes, I want to go. The visit was simple. She didn't bring tools this time, just a music cube, a small sketchbook, and a soft stuffed animal she had repaired. One ear sewn, one eye replaced. She sat in the corner of the room where the children waited. No one forced introductions. No one made noise. She simply turned on the music, placed the stuffed creature on the floor, and started drawing. Eventually, the children came closer. The boy reached for the toy. The girl peeked at the sketchbook. Corrie smiled. Small, warm, real. Later, the station's counselor whispered to Decker. She didn't say much, but somehow, she said everything they needed to hear. As they flew back to the firelight, Corrie looked at the stars. I thought my voice didn't matter, she said. Decker replied. Your voice was never the problem. The galaxy just didn't know how to listen. She turned to him, eyes soft. But you did. Back at the shop, she began building something new. Her biggest project yet. It wasn't just a device. It was a ship, small, sleek, fast, just big enough for 2. She built it piece by piece, over weeks, welding, coding, wiring by hand, not as an escape, but as a mission. She had been found. Now she would go find others. One evening, as she fastened the last bolt, Decker stepped beside her, holding a silver plate. 4 engraved words shimmered in the dim light. Corrie Sarah, lifetime crew. He handed it to her, with a quiet pride in his eyes. You were never mine, he said. But I'll always be yours. She held it with both hands, to move to speak. Inside, a small crowd had gathered. Children she had helped, adults she had repaired machines for, vendors who once looked past her, even the station officer who signed her protection order. They weren't here to inspect. They weren't here to question. They were here to celebrate. And Corrie, who once couldn't look anyone in the eye, now stood at the center of them all, her badge gleaming, hands steady. A child tugged her sleeve. One of the little ones she had visited weeks ago. Miss Corrie, the boy asked, are you still a return product? She knelt, smiling. No, she said. I'm a returned person. To myself. He grinned and handed her a drawing. In it, she stood tall, surrounded by stars, a glowing tool in her hand, light around her like a crown. Can you fix more people like me someday? I plan to, she whispered. Later that night, Decker led her to the back hangar. Behind the workshop wall, newly cleaned and painted, stood the ship she'd built. A pale silver hull with soft blue trim, a clear cockpit, new thrusters, quiet engines. What should we call her? He asked. Kaa. I thought for a moment. Second light, she said. He tilted his head. Why that? Because my first light was you, she said. But now, I want to be that for someone else. The next morning, they prepared for launch. No fanfare, no speech, just a quiet loading of tools, supplies, and a small folded note Corrie left behind on the counter. Fix more than machines, find more than parts. Listen louder than words. As the ship lifted, the repair moon grew smaller behind them, but she didn't feel like she was leaving. She felt like she was beginning. Hours into their new journey, she turned to Decker and said softly, "The day you opened that crate, I was afraid." "I was too," he replied. "I didn't know if I could give you what you needed." "You didn't," she said, smiling. "You gave me enough. I grew the rest." From her pocket, she pulled a string. On it were 3 things: her name badge, Kari Sarah, the lifetime crew plate, and the yellow tag once tied to her crate, return product, now scratched over with a single word: "power." Decker read it and laughed gently. "You kept the tag." "I want to remember where I came from," she said, "but not where I stayed." The stars ahead were endless. New outposts, new voices, new children who needed someone to say, "I see you." Kari would be that someone. She wasn't a number anymore. She wasn't what they once called her. She was what she chose to be: a builder, a rescuer, a voice, a home. And as the ship drifted into starlight, she whispered to herself, "I'm not for sale. I'm forever claimed, but never chained."